It was a Monday, exactly 1 week before Christmas, when I arrived home from work to find a package on my family's front porch. I was in my final year of high school, and I'd landed myself a holiday job so I could buy gifts. But since I was on the early shift and finished around 2 or 2:30, I used to get home way earlier than my mom and dad when it was still light outside. It was addressed to my dad, around the size of a shoebox, and had "Handle with care" written on the plain brown wrapping paper. It didn't look like a Christmas gift, but since it was that time of the year, I figured that's what it was. I carefully picked it up and immediately noticed that it felt much heavier than it looked. I remember thinking, okay, whatever's inside must have been expensive, because the weight of it, coupled with the "Handle with care" thing, that made me think that it was some dishware, maybe even a car stereo, the kind of thing that he was into. Carefully, I set it down on the kitchen table, trying to figure out who it might be from. My dad didn't have many friends, and he spent most of his time at work, so I figured it was either from a client or someone from his small circle of friends. I didn't put too much thought into it, though, because all would be revealed come Christmas when he opened it. At least, that's what I thought. Mom came home a few hours later, then Dad was the last to get home at around 6 that evening. We showed him the package the second that he'd stepped in the kitchen, then after making coffee and asking us about our days, Dad took the package up to his office. Mom told him that he should wait till Christmas before opening it, but Dad was right when he said nothing on the package marked it out as a gift, and the wrapping paper was plain and there wasn't any sort of "Merry Christmas" written on the tag. The only distinctive marking it had was my dad's name, so he figured it was something to do with work and wouldn't be particularly exciting. The last thing my mom said to him was something like, "Well, if it's edible, at least share some with us." And he said he would, and then he walked out of the kitchen. Seconds after my dad carried the package up to his office, I finished my coffee, put the cup in the sink, and then walked into the family room and flopped down on the couch in front of the TV. I was flicking through the channels when I called out to my mom asking what time dinner was going to be ready. I didn't get to finish that sentence, though. I was midway through when we both heard this very tremendous bang coming from upstairs, and we met each other in the hallway. Mom and myself, I mean, and then ran upstairs to see what the hell made that noise. Mom made it to the door of my dad's office first, and when she opened it, I didn't see what was inside. I just sort of smelled this burning of chemicals before Mom started to scream. And what happened next was kind of a blur. I remember looking into the office and seeing my father, but then immediately slamming the door closed again because he wasn't him anymore. It was a complete mess in there. Pieces of him were everywhere, and I knew he was dead. There was no bringing him back, and there was so much blood and bits of body everywhere that my gut reaction was to just not want to see him. My priority was Mom, and it kind of amazes me how I figured all that out in a fraction of a second, totally wordlessly. She saw what she saw and screamed, like you might expect any regular person to do when they see their life partner blown apart in front of them. But with me, it was like a shutdown. Emotionally, I mean, so I could deal with the fact that my mom was having a complete nervous breakdown right before my eyes. I mean, given what she'd seen, what we'd just seen, there was no telling what she was going to do. The only thing I could get her to focus on was calling 911, so that's what we did. But then, she told the 911 operator what had happened, and then that sent her into a spiral again. She wailed and cried and passed the phone over to me, and I had to leave the room just to be able to focus on what was coming out of my mouth. It was terrible. Without a doubt, the single worst thing I've ever experienced, and I know for a fact that I'll never get over it. But that's not because it was so sudden or violent. It's because even all these years later, we have no idea who sent that package or why. The only clue I got is how people at his job acted in the time after his funeral. Dad worked for some import or export company that operated out of Los Angeles and San Diego. He made them a lot of money, and he was paid handsomely for his services. The company was amazing in the initial aftermath of his death, They paid all of his funeral costs, made sure the life insurance and pension money came through, and even offered to pay for me and my mom to head off on a vacation to Hawaii for about a month, though we didn't accept that offer. And when it came time for me to try and find out what Dad actually did for them, as in what his job was, they completely shut down and started stonewalling us. They basically said that they were more than happy to assist with any further financial costs in relation to Dad's murder, but when it came time to finding out so much as a scrap of information about how he actually made them their money, that was against company policy. They promised that they'd worked hand in hand with the cops should they reach out to talk to them, but then, according to those very same cops, the company only did the bare minimum that they were legally required to do, and then their lips were sealed. As one cop put it, they went out of their way to ensure that we only had a vague job title and description in the form of product acquisition, and very little else. We didn't know what his day-to-day looked like. We didn't know the names of the people he worked with, and when it came to the possibility of Dad making any enemies through his job, his bosses and coworkers were less than helpful. It made no sense to us at the time. How could they be so helpful and not get in trouble with the law for, I don't know, obstruction of justice or something like that? Well, they had lawyers, a lot of them, who helped them stay well within the legal guidelines, while at the same time keeping us and the cops almost completely in the dark. We had no idea who had sent that bomb, no idea why they'd wanted to kill my father, and no idea how the hell they'd managed to make the whole thing completely untraceable. The only thing the cops could think of was that whoever built that bomb and delivered it to our house had been hired as a professional to do a job. In other words, my dad was killed by a corporate hitman. They never found the guy that did it, and we never found if anyone paid to have him killed, and if so, who. The pain has gotten easier over the years, and Mom definitely still struggles with it from time to time, but in terms of being able to function as a family, things have gotten a lot better. The only thing I've struggled with is the resentment that I feel towards the people he worked with, the people who abandoned us when we needed them most, and the people I'm pretty sure have intimate knowledge of the circumstances in which my dad was murdered. I've had 2 different therapists tell me that, if I let it, my resentment will be the thing that destroys me. But I disagree. I think the only people who will really suffer if I let that happen are the people who know what happened to my dad.
Hey guys, thanks so much for all the support. If you haven't subscribed to the channel yet, please feel free to do so. Growing up, I watched the classic holiday movie Home Alone multiple times and never imagined that I would find myself in a similar situation. However, life took a dark turn, and the twist was anything but comedic. I found myself in a horror situation that seemed to have been taken straight out of a movie. The fear and uncertainty that came with the experience left an indelible mark on me. Following my mother's abandonment and move to live with her new husband and kids, I found myself living with my aunt. My father didn't care for me as well, and I would only see child support to my aunt. That Christmas Eve, my aunt asked if I could spend the night home alone so that they could celebrate with her boyfriend and his family. Despite feeling powerless to demand anything given my circumstances, I agreed to her request, grateful for the roof over my head. My aunt's house was located right beside a forest preserve, surrounded by lush greenery and far from the hustle and bustle of the city. We had always felt safe and secure in this peaceful abode, until that night, when something strange occurred. When Aunt Selena was away, I was sitting in the living room watching my favorite cartoon program on the television. Suddenly, I heard a loud noise that seemed to be coming from the front door. I quickly turned to check the clock, which read 11:45 p.m. I knew for sure that my aunt wouldn't be back tonight, and even if she did, she had a spare key with her. It was highly unlikely that anyone else would drop by at such an odd hour. The sound was making me increasingly anxious and frightened, and I couldn't shake off the unnerving feeling. As I stood frozen in the hallway, I called out to my aunt, hoping that she was the one standing on the other side of the door. Unfortunately, no one responded, and the eerie silence made my heart beat faster. I was too scared to move, so I thought turning up the volume of the TV would help me drown out the pounding of my heart. However, I could barely concentrate on the program I was watching, as my mind was fixated on the strange presence lurking outside the door. Unlike most children my age who would have thought it was Santa or his elves with a present, I knew better. Santa wasn't real, and the idea of a stranger pretending to be him terrified me beyond measure. I couldn't shake off the feeling that whoever was standing outside the door was up to no good. As I returned to sit on the couch, I tried my best to focus on the program I was watching, when suddenly there was a loud noise that sounded like thud, thud, coming from the front door. I froze in fear, my heart racing as I tried to convince myself that it was just a simple knock, but I knew it wasn't, because we had a doorbell that people usually use to announce their arrival. In a trembling voice, I managed to ask, Who is it?" There was no response, just silence. After a few seconds, another knock echoed through the house, sending shivers down my spine. This time, I didn't have the courage to ask who it was. I remained silent, hoping that whoever was at the door would go away. But then, I heard a faint whisper that made my blood run cold. "Hey kid, open the door." It was the voice of an old woman, but it was low and chilling, sending shivers down my spine. I felt like I was in a horror movie. I didn't reply. Instead, I covered my mouth with my palms of my hands, trying to stifle my breath so that whoever it was couldn't hear me. The voice whispered again, "Open the door, kid. I have a present for you." This time, it sounded more eager and impatient than before. I knew that I had to be careful. I didn't know who was outside or what they wanted. I sat still, waiting for the person to leave, hoping that they would leave me alone. The sound of the knocking grew louder and more forceful, reverberating throughout the house and causing the door to shake with each impact. My heart raced with fear, and I couldn't shake the feeling that whoever was on the other side meant me harm. Despite my terror, I was paralyzed with indecision, unable to even consider calling 911 for help. Instead, I curled up on the couch, desperately trying to hide myself from the pounding at the door and the whispering threats of the mysterious stranger outside. As the night wore on, tears streamed down my face unwillingly as I desperately clutched the blanket around me for comfort. The knocking never ceased, a constant reminder of the danger lurking just outside. Exhausted, I eventually cried myself to sleep, only to be jolted awake by someone shaking me. Blinking away the grogginess, I saw Aunt Selena standing over me, her concerned gaze fixed on my disheveled form as she was asking me if I slept on the couch the entire night. With a trembling voice, I began bawling my eyes out and recounted to her the details of the previous night's events, and she reassured me that she would look into it. More terrifying was the fact that when she checked the CCTV footage outside the house to see if there was anyone there that night, there was no one. The footage showed an empty seat with no signs of anyone walking by her house, let alone standing outside the front door. The memory of that unsettling incident plagued my dreams for years to come. The image of that mysterious woman, whispering from beyond the closed door, beckoning me to open it, was etched into my mind. Nevertheless, I was grateful that I never had to experience that horror again. This incident happened to us about 3 years ago on Christmas Eve. Not only me, but everyone in my family witnessed that horrible moment. And let me tell you before starting that this story of mine is totally paranormal. One who doesn't believe in all this would start to believe after listening to what we experienced. I am the youngest son from a joint family, including my father, mother, and my 2 elder sisters. Not to forget my grandpa and uncle and aunt. My eldest sister was married, and the two of us were still studying. I was in my second year of graduation, while my elder sister was pursuing her post-graduation. It was Christmas Eve, and my eldest sister had come to visit us. She was not the same sister she used to be before getting married. She was a lot quieter and almost spoke to no one. She seemed like a doll who would only do what had been provided as input. We also asked our family doctor to look at her condition, but she said she was normal and just might be having some stress or something. At first, we believed that she might have a fight with her in-laws or her hubby, so we didn't bother her and tried to act normal in front of her. It was Christmas Eve day. The date was the 25th of December, 1977. We were busy decorating our Christmas tree, and my sister was sitting quietly on the sofa right in front of us. We were expecting that she would eventually come to us after seeing us doing all this just like before, but she remained sitting there and didn't even smile for a second. Suddenly, something odd happened to her. After finishing the decoration, I took some sweets and went to her so that I could make her eat even a single bite of it, but instead of eating, she fainted in my arms. I grabbed her and shouted out loud to call my dad and others. She was breathing heavily, and something like white foam or saliva was coming out from her mouth and nose. We all got scared, and my dad and I lifted in our hands and ran to the car. My uncle helped us load her inside the car. We all drove to the hospital as fast as we could. We took her to the nearest hospital where the doctor examined her and claimed she was suffering from food poisoning. He told us that there was nothing to worry about and gave some tablets to her and asked us to take her, and she was all right. She just needed some rest. We all relaxed and took her back home. This time, she seemed to be her usual self again. We took her to the hall and let her sit on the sofa. We were discussing her medicine when all of a sudden, her whole body started shaking like crazy. We all ran to hold her up, but she didn't stop shaking for a few minutes. After that, she lay down while opening her eyes, and all she was pointing to was the ceiling. We were asking her what happened to her, but she wasn't reacting at all. My dad ran to the kitchen to fetch some water for her. All she was doing was staring at the ceiling without even closing her eyebrows. After that, she started to chant something. I don't know what she was muttering, but no one could understand her language. We all got really scared and ran to the hospital again with her. After reaching the hospital, the doctor checked her again. Even now, she was muttering those same words which were completely out of our knowledge. The doctor examined her again, this time more carefully to ensure that he might have made a mistake before. But even this time, the result was the same, and she was totally normal. The doctor asked us to take her to a mental asylum as there was nothing he could have done to help her. He believed that my sister was mentally weak and she needed proper treatment, but we knew that she was not like this before her marriage. We refused to go and took her back home. After reaching home, my dad called her in-laws to ask if something happened to her that was responsible for her condition, but he was completely unaware of this. They all came to see my sister. For a moment, a verbal fight broke out between my dad and her father-in-law. My sister was completely aware of all this, and she was still looking at the ceiling. We had never experienced something like this. I was sitting there the whole time, just beside her, holding her hand. I just wanted to get her well. After discussing with her in-laws for some time, my dad and uncle came to me and told me that she will be fine very soon. I didn't know what they discussed, but I believed him. After about half an hour, our doorbell rang. My dad stood up and went to open the door in a hurry, as he already knew who was at the door. It was none other than the father of the Holy Church, which was about 5 miles from our house. He came to my sister with a cross in his hand and a bottle of holy water in his other hand. He asked us to catch her as hard as we could. I couldn't understand all this, but all seemed to be like the horror movies I watched during my childhood days. He just remembered Jesus and threw some holy water upon my sister. Suddenly, she became furious and started struggling hard to get herself free from our grip. All of a sudden, I was feeling a ton of power inside her, but we tightened our grip and didn't let her go. Father started to chant Jesus' holy words. As far as I remember, he was reciting, "Ooh, dirty soul, leave her body in the name of Jesus. Leave her sister in the name of Jesus." After listening to this, she started breathing heavily and shouting and screaming loudly. She was not the same sister I knew. Her voice felt like a man, and she was a lot more powerful than a girl should be. Somehow, that was exactly similar to the movie scenes I watched a few days ago. I can't forget her face. She tried to bite me and opened her mouth almost thrice her normal size. This chanting and holy water thing went on for the next 10 minutes, and at last, suddenly, she felt powerless and fainted. The father stopped his chanting and put a locket of crosses around her neck. He told us that now she will be all right, and left from there. My sister kept on sleeping for continuous 4 hours after that. Meanwhile, we were waiting for her to wake up. We wanted to know whether she was all right or not, and everything went on as we expected. She woke up and came to us. We were waiting to hear her voice, and now she was all right. It felt like we had heard her voice after ages. Now she was completely all right, and after a long struggle, I got my sister back. This whole incident was too scary, and I don't think no one ever experienced what we went through. I just wish everyone happiness and well-being.
So this happened all the way back in the late 1990s when I was a college sophomore. Me and the girl I was dating at the time had been going steady for about 8 months, and since she was my first real girlfriend, my mom was pretty keen to meet her. And what better time than the holidays to introduce her to the folks? During the week before Christmas, my mom's family traditionally held quite a large gathering up at my uncle's place over in Sandy, in my home state of Oregon. Pretty much all my extended family head out there year after year from all over the Portland area, and since they've gotten word that I was bringing my girlfriend, the hype to meet her was huge. I won't lie, I was kind of nervous that they'd embarrass me in front of her, but that anxiety was totally misplaced. She got along really well with all of them, and despite some playful humiliation when a cousin of mine told her the story of how I literally peed my pants at the Haunted Mansion ride when I was a kid, they were a credit to me. And when it came to driving her back home, she seemed to be more into me than ever. We'd agreed to drive back down to Eugene at like 7 p.m. so I wouldn't be too tired driving back. But since we had such a good time, we stayed way later than we had planned to, and didn't get on the road until about 10:30 p.m. that evening. In the hopes of making the journey a little faster, I ended up taking the OR211 instead of just sticking to the I-5S for the whole drive. Annoyingly, this didn't quite actually make the journey any faster, but point being, the OR211 was pretty much surrounded by farms or these huge swaths of dense pine forest. So as you can imagine, big stretches of it aren't lit very well at all, and for some parts of the drive, we were moving through complete darkness, saved only by our car's headlights. But honestly, I wasn't all worried about it. I was pretty good at reading a map, and once I was back on the I-5, a road I knew pretty well, I figured everything would be all good. So we're just cruising along, in high spirits, talking about how goofy some of my family were, but generally my girlfriend was singing their praises and telling how she couldn't wait to meet them again. It's right around then that we hit a section of the highway that descends down this big old hill, heading up to the bridge crossing over Deep Creek. There, the highway is sandwiched by some of the densest forests you've ever likely seen, and there is absolutely nothing lighting up the highway. It's the only thing we can see from the front seats of the cars, like maybe 20 or 30 feet that our headlights are illuminating, and pretty much nothing else. But like I said, we're in high spirits, completely unprepared for what was about to happen. Right as the highway was starting to level off, something darts across the front of us so fast and so suddenly that I barely missed smashing into it. I brake so hard that I almost gave the pair of us whiplash. Then, when we're stopped, both me and my girlfriend are in a complete frenzy of, "Oh God, did you see that? What was that?" There are plenty of deer in that area of Oregon, plenty of coyotes too, but the thing that ran out in front of us was way too big to be a coyote, and something about the way it moved gave me this gut feeling that it wasn't a deer either. The shape was just way too slender, almost like whatever was out there had moved on 2 legs, not 4. Now next thing, I know how completely dumb this sounds in retrospect, but my curiosity just got the better of me and I decided I wanted to investigate. So again, this was also incredibly dumb. I turned the car like 90 degrees in the highway so I could point our headlights into the woods. Yes, this could have caused a horrible accident if another car had come along at the same time I was doing this, but I don't think I was thinking straight at the time. You see, as a kid growing up in the Pacific Northwest, I've heard a lot of stories about Bigfoot and Sasquatch, and I'd be lying if I said that they didn't capture my imagination. No, I'm not saying that I thought I'd caught a glimpse of Gigantopithecus or anything. I know the stories are mostly exactly that, just stories, but a part of me just wanted to be sure. So like I said, I turned the car 90 degrees, turned on the high beams, and stepped out of the driver's side and onto the highway. I stare off into the trees for a minute or two, but I don't see a thing. Nothing is moving out there, and the whole scene was as quiet as the grave. But as I'm looking, I get this feeling in the pit of my stomach, and start to feel as if though I'd made a huge error of judgment. It was one of the most intensely terrifying feelings I'd ever felt in my entire life, a feeling like I was being watched by something predatory. I know it's a huge cliche, and the whole "I felt like I was being watched" thing is such a tired old trope, but I don't really know any other way to phrase it. My heart was pounding. The hairs on the back of my neck are standing on end, and my gut just turned to ice. So without turning my back to the woods, where I expected the danger to come from, I started edging back towards the car. Then suddenly, out of nowhere, I practically jump out of my skin when I hear the car's horn letting off one long, excruciatingly loud, extended blast. I mean, it scared me so bad that I almost straight up peed my pants, Haunted Mansion style. My first thought was that my girlfriend had ended up leaning on the horn as she climbed over into the driver's seat for some reason, because she'd done that once or twice before. But as I turn back around, I can see she's still on the passenger side, but that she's actually leaning over to push the horn in what was evidently a frenzied attempt to get my attention. I run back to the car and ask her if she's okay, but she doesn't say a single word to me. She just points off to a spot about 50 feet away from where we parked. I spin my head around to see what she's pointing at, and that's when I see it. What was, without a shadow of a doubt, the thing that had run in front of our car just a few minutes prior. Lit up by the residual light of our high beams, what I saw was really obviously a man, but he was covered in animal furs, what looked like a mishmash of deer skins, bear skins, and elk skins, and on his head, secured in a way I'm not even sure of, were these antlers. At the time, because of how closely it was to the holidays, I remember the words "reindeer man" just flashed into my mind, maybe in the naive hope that the dude was dressed that way out of some misdirected festive spirit. But he certainly didn't seem in any kind of festive spirit, not in the least bit. Like, I couldn't see his eyes because of the weird kind of head covering he had on, but I could see his mouth, and at first he kind of looked like he was giving us a smile. Only as I looked, I could see it wasn't a smile at all. This guy was just baring his teeth to us, like the way chimps do as some kind of warning. After that, he turned and walked off into the forest, never to be seen again. Obviously, right after that, me and my girlfriend just got out of there and got back onto the roads towards the I-5. It took us both a while to calm our nerves, but my girlfriend was particularly shaken up, and that's because she'd seen something that I hadn't. And as we drove on, she explained exactly what that was. While I'd been staring off into the woods, looking for Sasquatch or whatever, she'd noticed him out of her peripheral vision, but was basically frozen in fear for a moment or two as she watched him walking slowly towards me. Or rather, walking isn't the right word. From how she described it, this guy was stalking, the way a hunter might stalk a deer. The way she puts it, she had to summon up pretty much all of her courage to be able to lean over and honk the horn the way she did. Then when Reindeer Man had heard the honking, he backed off a little before I saw him, and like I said, he kind of just froze in place before disappearing. I did a fair amount of online research when I got home to try and find out if anyone else had any run-ins with this guy, but there was absolutely nothing online about him. There are plenty of crazy survivalist types up here in the Pacific Northwest, and I'm guessing he was one of those, but they tend to be pretty open about their existence, sometimes even advertise themselves as militiamen or whatever, whereas the Reindeer Man seemed like he was living completely off the grid. I don't live in Oregon anymore, Me and my girlfriend during the encounter broke up at the end of college, but when we were still together and I happened to be driving down towards Eugene, I always avoided the stretch of highway that I saw the reindeer man on. I've told this story a lot over the years, and some people honestly just think I'm making it up as like a campfire tale or something. But it's not a tale, it's not made up, and it's definitely not just intended to be some dumb spoopy story. It's most definitely a warning to anyone traveling on that road at night, because if my girlfriend wasn't with me when he ran out in front of the car, if she wasn't there to spot him before he crept up on me, only to scare him off with a blast of the horn, I honestly might not be here to warn you guys. So please, this holiday season, drive careful, drive slow, and do not stop for any reason on dark, deserted stretches of forest highway.